the first things you may notice if you come into Mobile is that there's this RV park. And there are people who come from all over the country with their motorhomes, and they park in that space. And so I took those two shots, one showing the overall view under the interstate, and then a close shot of one of the motorhomes with the flags being displayed. Also, one of the things that you notice all around town during Mardi Gras are those barricades. You may also notice that there are some signs that say 2 hours before the parade you shouldn't park in those spaces. And there's also a Mardi Gras impound lot, and you'll be able to make that connection with one of the later slides that you'll see. I have a picture that I had recently printed of that scene, which was one that we set up at our house. We have a little house next door to where we live. We live at 2206. We have a house 2208, and we sometimes refer to that as a party house. And so we have that little neon sign that we put there and illuminate it, and we thought we would just arrange that so you can see the close shot of that print. That was a picture that was taken at, I think, the airport when there were some people coming from out of town. And just so that you know who they are, the young lady in the middle is Alexis Herman, who is from Mobile, Alabama. And her dad was the first king of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association, MAMGA, okay? And of course, the reason she's named Alexis is her dad's name was Alex, okay? And it was later changed to King Alexis with an E by a woman whose name was Frederica Evans. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get to the part where we talk about the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association. And the man on the left there in that scene is Alexis Herman's husband. He's a dentist in Washington, D.C. Some of you may remember, too, that Alexis Herman was the Secretary of Commerce in the Clinton administration, but she is a native Mobilean. And the person on the right is my wife's first cousin. We refer to her as sister. She was coming in, I think, from Detroit at that time. On this picture, you will see some of the vehicles that were parked down there on South Broad Street as the Carnival Cavaliers were about to get ready for their first Mardi Gras parade this year. And that's inside their float barn. And of course, you may recognize Darwin Singleton, and then some of the other members, the president and the vice president of the Carnival Cavaliers. And of course, one of the first things they did was to proceed to put the mask on before I took their pictures. They also allowed me to take some pictures of their various floats. It was amazing to see how many floats they had crammed into that float barn on South Broad Street. But I got in there and took quite a few pictures. Of course, there's a picture of the train, that's their emblem float. And then there's another picture. I thought that was kind of interesting. Stick a cork in it, 2013, because I whistle a lot, and my wife sometimes reprimands me for whistling all the time. And so I've tried to put a cork in it, and I also came up with a resolution for 2013. Had one piece of thing made that said, "This is a no whistle zone," but I changed it to "This is a no conflict zone." So we try hard not to have any conflicts at our house. That's another picture of some of the floats, but you notice all the Mardi Gras beads. And it was interesting to see all the people who were riding the floats coming in, getting all of their throws ready, and loading up the float before the floats were moved from the float barn. And of course, I'm sure the people at Toomey's are always happy to see that. As a matter of fact, I think there was a representative from Toomey's who was in the float barn swiping credit cards and various things of that sort. Yeah. That's another float that's in the float barn. Another one of the floats which I thought was kind of interesting. And that's a picture of their Mardi Gras emblem. And of course you see the name there. I'm not going to tell you what the last name is, but he was one of the officers of the Carnival Cavaliers. And then there are the motorcycle policemen outside waiting to put the floats in position. It was really kind of interesting to observe that whole sequence of events because, as I said, the floats were all built in the particular spaces there inside the float barn on South Broad Street. They were really kind of jammed close together. But then, as they got ready to move them out, they had to wait for the police to come and position themselves. And then there were two policemen who would lead a float from there down to the staging location near downtown. And so here you see the floats actually being pulled out of the float barn one at a time. And there were a number of men who had to manhandle the floats to actually get them in position to relocate them so they could be all pulled out of that door, which was not on the Broad Street side, but on one of the side streets there. I thought that was just kind of an interesting float. And we may have seen that one in several parades. I took this picture because I mentioned that they have a parade over at MARC, which used to be called Mobile Association for Retarded Citizens, but is now referred to simply as Mobile ARC. So if you have not ever seen one of their parades, you might want to make it a point to go. Two young ladies were standing out right in front of the door to this building, and they had some interesting headpieces on. So I asked their permission just to take a shot of from the waist up and not necessarily their faces. But they were standing there waiting for that Saturday parade to proceed to come by. And the reason I chose to come to this location on that day, there's a young man who always comes out to the museum in the park, the Museum of Art, because we have had our 6th annual model train show there at Christmas time. There's one young man who has come for the last several years, and his mother sent me an email message recently. She said the other night we were coming home and our son was in the back seat very quiet, and all of a sudden he said, "Mom, when I grow up I want to be just like Dr. Holloway." And I thought that was quite nice. He likes trains. I'm glad he likes trains because I like trains. I mentioned earlier that my mantra nowadays is not an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but rather a train a day helps keep the doctor away. Whether it's a real train, a model train, if I see one, think about a train, I just really do like trains, okay? But I stood in this location because the young man who had made that statement was on the float, and I had run out of power for my camera, which I'm still using film, but if you don't have power, then it won't advance even the film or open or close the shutter. So I had to go home and get a new battery for the camera. When I got back, his mother was there, the one who had sent me that email message about her son saying, "I want to be just like Dr. Holloway." But he had gone, and so I asked her where he had gone with his dad. And she said, "Well, they're right around on Royal Street in front of the museum." So I proceeded to rush around and find a parking no parking zone, by the way, but luckily I didn't get a ticket. And I took a picture of him and his dad, and these young ladies were there, so they gave me an opportunity to take their pictures too. Then, of course, on that Saturday, you see the people on the horses leading the procession. And there you see a car being towed to the impound zone because evidently they were caught having been parked in the wrong place. This picture was taken inside of Toomey's. Sometimes, even if you don't want to buy anything at Toomey's, just go in Toomey's and kind of look around. And the young lady who's the manager there and her sister used to enjoy listening to my radio program years ago when I was on WKRG. We had a program called Holloway House. Some of you may have heard it, you know. And so she's always very nice. And so she gave us a box of moon pies. And so before we leave today, we're going to throw some moon pies, okay? I also want you to try something when you get your moon pie. If you've never tried a fried moon pie with Bluebell homemade ice cream on top of it, try it. Now, how do you fix a fried moon pie? Well, I'm going to give you a quick recipe. You can either take Ritz crackers and crumble them up, okay, to make a crust, or even better, take vanilla wafers and crumble them up, okay? Break an egg, beat it up so that you make sort of a batter. Dip the moon pie in the egg to coat it, and then you put some of the graham cracker, vanilla wafers, Ritz cracker crust on it, and put it in some hot vegetable oil for just a short period of time, just long enough to brown the exterior. And it's really a tasty treat. You might even want to add just a little bit of sugar, so you all try it. And of course, you can take one of my cards, and if you're not pleased, you can call me and complain. This is a picture of the band that you're hearing now, the Excelsior Band. And of course, in that last slide, you may have also noticed that a lot of the bees end up in the trees. So as you drive around in Mobile, you can look up and you can see in different locations a lot of bees that are still hanging in the trees, okay? That's the Excelsior Band. They were performing downstairs, as a matter of fact, some time ago. And this is a picture of our son Joseph's garment when he was king of Mobile area Mardi Gras back in 1996, some 17 years ago. Joseph is a young man right there. He's now working in Miramar, Florida, and for many years he worked at WKRG TV. This garment, which is here in the History Mobile Museum, but it's resting currently, is one that was fashioned after the regalia worn by Emperor Haile Selassie. Our son Joseph has always liked reggae music, and so my wife was talking to Joseph and asking him if he knew anything more about the history of reggae music and the fact that it came from Ethiopia, and there were a group of people called Rastafarians, and of course he wanted to know more about them. So we took the time to get in touch with a young man who's getting really quite a bit of popularity now. He was a student at Blunt when my wife was teaching there, and he's a speed artist. He was on Anderson Cooper's show not too long ago, and he called us the other night to tell us about some other offers that he's gotten. He's beginning to get worldwide attention. But he's the one who took the idea that my wife had and Joseph had, and I guess I had some part in it, and he designed the robe, which you will see in the next slide. Say again?
Designed the train.
I'm sorry, designed the train. You know, I'm going to also make a comment about that too, because one of my wife's friends was here from Charleston, South Carolina one year, and she said, well, I understand your son was king of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association in 1996, and what's the difference between a cape and a train? I said, about $30,000. So that quieted her down. As a matter of fact, I enjoy coming up with remarks because there are a lot of people who try to say smart things for one reason or another. And I remember, since I mentioned trains, we were running our trains at the Greater Gulf State Fair one year. And one of my former colleagues from the University of South Alabama, I guess, was trying to be smart. He says, oh, Joaquin, I see you playing with trains. And I called him by name. I said, no, we're not playing. We're serious about the hobby of model railroading. And I thought that had been enough, but he just kept trying to find something smart to say, you know. So finally he said, well, where's your cap? I looked him right in the eye, called him by name. I said, I don't wear a cap because I own the railroad. At which time he left. And also on that railroad theme, 2 of my photographs are now riding the rails with the Norfolk and Southern, because I had a chance to meet one of the vice presidents of the Norfolk Southern Railroad when he was here in town several months ago. And 2 of my photographs are now in the Buena Vista car, inspection train car, where all the heavyweights ride. Okay? All right, this is a picture of Joseph Train, and of course that's the Lion of Judah. And of course these masks here were selected for a certain reason. And of course these 4 parts here in that crest, the knowledge represents those of us who are involved in education. And then of course the chemicals represent the fact that our daughter was a medical doctor, and her great-grandfather was a medical doctor, and my wife's father was an Episcopal priest. And of course my mother was supervisor of music in the public school system. And so you may know that there is a school called Ariel W. Holloway Elementary School, which was named after my mother. And also I encourage you, if you're over on Dolphin Street, to go by Wenzel's, because there's an African-American Heritage Trail marker right in front of 607 Dolphin Street. And that was where my grandfather had his drugstore downstairs, his apothecary, and his office was upstairs. And my mother grew up right across the street where there's a vacant lot now next to the Cathedral Gallery. But my grandfather owned that property back in the early 1900s back then. And just to give you a little aside, back then it was requested that all of the people of color would put the word colored on their markers, on their signs in front of their buildings, because there were a lot of people who had displays back then. And even if you look at some of the older directories, you'll see the letter C, which indicates that they were colored. I guess it could have also stood for Caucasian, but we know they probably weren't. You know, sometimes, even when I was teaching at the University of South Alabama, people would say, well, why do you call yourselves members of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People? My response is simply, everybody's some color, otherwise you'd be clear. Yeah. So I don't think there's anybody who's really black, or anybody who's really white. We all exist on a continuum between those extremes. Okay? That's a picture of me and, of course, my wife. That was taken 17 years ago. Okay? And then that's a picture of Joseph with his garment. The garment was made at Zimlet, the florist, I believe it was. I don't remember that, Ron Barrett, and I don't remember the other guy's name. But anyhow, quite a lot of effort went into the preparation of that.
That's the garment.
That's, okay, that was the garment that was fashioned after Haile Selassie, the one previously, okay? And then this is the way he looked on the night of the coronation. that was taken at the Mobile Civic Center. So you can see the extent of that, not cape, but train. And of course, the H stands for Holloway, and you see the mask there. And I think these masks may have been imported from, they were made here in China. Okay. Okay. Like a lot of the Mardi Gras things are made in China. A lot of everything is made in China. This may have been made in China. Okay. But that's Joseph. And you notice too that instead of having a traditional crown on, he had, help me, Melvin.
The crown is fashioned after Haile Selassie's crown.
She knows a lot
He
about
didn't
it.
have a scepter, he had a sword.
Right, he didn't have a scepter, he had a sword.
Haile Selassie always carried.
And he didn't want a crown like this, so he wanted something that was quite different. And you'll see a close-up of that in just a minute. But you can see the length of that. And that's the way it looks when it's actually on display in that section right out there, here in the History Mobile Museum. You'll notice in this scene right here, Joseph is riding on the float. I guess that was on the Fat Tuesday parade, in the Fat Tuesday parade. And he does not have his crown on, because he didn't want to wear it while he was riding on the float. And of course it was rain, so he didn't have to have his train on either. He could just have his outer garment, although I think he did have his train on there. But he's talking on his cell phone. And the reason he's talking on his cell phone, he was working with WKRG TV at the time. And I think that's probably the only time a monarch has done a live interview while he was in the Mardi Gras parade. Okay? So that explains that scene. And there's his crown. And I came down not too long ago, and Jacob was able to set the crown up on a mannequin. And I took a picture there by the wall right behind you, Mrs. Holloway. You were wondering why I chose to get that shot, but that's the reason. I didn't want to include the molding, the crown molding. All right, that was when we had parked a motorhome there in some location so that we could, relax in the motorhome and then come outside and watch the parade as it passed by. And of course, on that very first slide, you saw Joseph sticking his head out of that little area there on that motorhome. This was when we were just walking down the street, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Look at that little dog. He was in the spirit, or she was in the spirit. But there are a lot of people who do very festive things during the Mardi Gras season. And of course, you recognize those merry widows. There's a group here called the Epicurean Club, and they have a luncheon on a Sunday prior to the Joaquin parade, and they have it usually at the Admiral Sims Hotel. And so the Merry Widows, some of them know me for one reason or another, but they usually come upstairs, and there are times when they've been kind enough to even let me take one of their garters off. And we have that photograph too, but we didn't include that in the sequence. And then after the widows come upstairs, they go down and get on that bus and go over to the Church Street graveyard. And then, of course, we go out on the balcony, and that's the scene looking down from the balcony at the crowd, catching moon pies, beads, and various other things on that Sunday. Now, this picture, and Mr. Samuels will probably recognize some of those people. This is Mr. Bastida, who had a tailor shop, Bastida Brothers Tailors. And they were located on Davis Avenue. Outstanding tailor. The whole family was an outstanding family. And Mrs. Bastida was a beautician. But Mr. Bastida was the first mayor of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association. And of course, nowadays they refer to that person who is sort of the leader of the Manga parades as the Grand Marshal. But that's a picture of Mr. Samuel Bastida. This is a picture of Dr. Russell. And Dr. Russell was one of the charter members of the Mobile Area Association, which was founded in 1938. So that organization is also 75 years old. And I understand from Eric Finley, who is the current president of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association, that Dr. Russell was also the president for about 50 years of that organization. And also this person right here is still living, that's Miss Aline Howard. She was the first queen of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association. And there's some other names. There's a name, Frederica Evans. And Miss Frederica Evans, I didn't have a chance to take her picture, but she was the one who actually suggested a change from Alex, King Alex, to King Alexis with the letter E. Alex Herman, again, was the father of Alexis Herman, and Alex Herman was the first king of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association. All right, this is a picture that was taken some years ago at a Mardi Gras ball, and that was a group known as the Crew d'Avenue. They've since changed their name to Crew de Bon Ton, but you can see how elaborate some of the costumes are they wear at these different balls, which all have a theme. The ball this year is going to be at the Yvonne Kennedy Auditorium on, I guess, Monday night. We were members of that group, but we aren't members of it at this point. But they have some very elaborate costumes they wear, and it's quite a festive occasion. You may have seen the floats in the Monday Mammoth Parade, the Tuesday Parade, with a group called the Mollies. And if you want to Google Molly, then you can find out what that was all about. When I was down in the float barn, I had a chance to actually stand up on one of the floats and take a picture of this Molly, Big Mary. And of course, there's a person here in town who was one of my students when I was teaching at Central High School, whose name is Mary. And I don't know if that's supposed to be a representation of that Mary. But I also took a picture of a little person called Slewfoot Joe. Both of them were Mollies, and of course they are featured prominently in the parades. That's the parade on Davis Avenue, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. right in front of the Yvonne Kennedy Auditorium. And of course, some of you may remember that Yvonne Kennedy died just recently. She was one of our state senators. And then you see, again, the elaborate costume that's even being used as they march down the street. That's one of the night parades. I don't remember which group that was. As a matter of fact, we were watching the night parade last night there in front of the Bishop's house on Governor Street. I don't know if that's the same parade or not, but anyhow, these are just a couple of scenes of night parades. And of course, at the end of every parade, you see the street sweepers coming by and the truck with all the water. They do an outstanding job here in the city of cleaning up all the mess that is usually made. And then I took this picture from my vantage point in the parking lot there in the bank building. I guess it's the MGM building now. And that's looking down at the awning at the Battle House of the Joaquin Club. And if you have a chance to go out to the municipal airport, just a couple of weeks ago, I delivered one of my photographs, which is going to be on display at the regional airport for the next 2 years. And it was a picture that was taken inside the Battle House. Also, I wanted to mention that this is one of the things that they use for the Mardi Gras balls, and this is what they call their crew bill. This has all the information about the members of the organization and things of that sort. One year, my wife and I went as the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I had those pictures too, but that made the number too many, so we kind of had to call through that and eliminate that. And then, of course, the day after Fat Tuesday is Ash Wednesday. And of course, that's a priest at our church. Nancy Threadgill is her name, the Reverend Nancy Threadgill. And of course, you recognize this woman right here. And of course, Nancy had a big blob of ashes, and in addition to getting them on Malvina's forehead, they also spilled over on her nose. So that explains that particular scene. And that's the end.